The Diamond Sutra, Chapter 3, the Orthodox Doctrine of the Great Vehicle. The Buddha told Subhuti, all bodhisattvas, mahasattvas, should thus subdue their hearts with the vow, I must cause all living beings, those born from eggs, born from wombs, born from moisture, born by transformation, those with form, those without form, those with thought, those without thought, those not totally with thought, and those not totally without thought, to enter nirvana without residue, and be taken across to extinction. Yet of the immeasurable, boundless, numberless numbers of living beings thus taken across to extinction, there is actually no living being taken across to extinction. And why? Subhuti, if a bodhisattva has a mark of self, a mark of others, a mark of living beings, or a mark of a life, he is not a bodhisattva. The Buddha told Subhuti how all bodhisattvas should subdue their hearts. All can mean many, the entire host of bodhisattvas, or it can refer to each individual bodhisattva, or it can refer to just one specific bodhisattva. Many is just one. One is likewise many. Two comes into being based upon the existence of one. Adding 1, 2, 3, 8, 9, 10, and so forth, there arises the many. Thus, all is said to mean one. Which one? The bodhisattva who subdues his heart. And if you really want to know who that bodhisattva is, you are that bodhisattva. Although that may sound unprincipled, actually there is no principle which can be expressed. If you truly wish to know who the bodhisattva is, you yourself must become that bodhisattva. If you, as a common person, believe that you can become a Buddha, how much the more easily can you become a bodhisattva? The Sanskrit word mahasattva means great being and refers to great bodhisattvas. How large is a great bodhisattva? How can you ask about the size of a great bodhisattva? He is just as great as a great bodhisattva. The 7 meanings of Mahasattva will give an idea of his grandeur. Number 1, he has perfected great roots for limitless kalpas. The Bodhisattva has made offerings before the Buddha to the triple jewel, bowing and revering the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, and performing many meritorious and virtuous deeds. From these acts, great roots develop. In a later passage, the Vajra Sutra says, "You should know that such people have not planted good roots with just one Buddha, 2 Buddhas, 3, 4, or 5 Buddhas, but have planted good roots with measureless millions of Buddhas." Number 2, he has great wisdom. His great wisdom is evident in his resolve to realize Bodhi. Without wisdom, such a decision cannot be made. Good roots and the wisdom acquired from cultivation in past lives enable people to read the sutras and participate in dhyana sessions. A person lacking good roots would, from the moment he entered the monastery door, find his heart jumping as though it were inhabited by a monkey, and pounding so hard that standing would be uncomfortable and sitting unbearable. He would resemble a god manifesting the 5 marks of decay, squirming and fidgeting in his seat, and finally running away. On the other hand, even though I threaten to beat my disciples and scold them daily, they do not run away. Why don't they run away? Because they have good roots. Don't think that a blow from the incense board is easy to endure. It's no joke. All of you who have not yet become enlightened are candidates for beating. By now, I should have beaten you all into running. My intention is to bring you all to enlightenment. Not only must one have great wisdom and the resolve to realize Bodhi, but one must also extensively rescue living beings. Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva's universal door exemplifies such resolve. However, in taking living beings across, one should not become attached to the mark of taking them across like the Emperor Wu of the Liang dynasty. When he met the first patriarch, Bodhidharma, he said, "Look at me. I have helped so many monks leave the home life. I have built so many temples, constructed so many bridges. How much merit would you say I have accrued?" He displayed arrogant attachment to marks and kept stressing the point, "Look at how great my merit is. Although you are a Dharma master from India, I doubt that you have as much merit as I." The emperor expected Patriarch Bodhidharma to praise his merit as vast and boundless. But the straight mind is the field of enlightenment. And Bodhidharma simply said, "You haven't any merit." Emperor Wu heard those words as if he had been struck by a blow and replied, "Why, you black-faced monk, how can you say such a thing to me?" He thereupon refused to acknowledge the patriarch. And since the emperor would no longer receive his teachings, Bodhidharma took his leave. The emperor actually had been taking living beings across, but he was attached to the mark of taking them across and sought certification from the patriarch. Who would have guessed that Bodhidharma would look him straight in the eye as if to say, I don't care if you are the emperor, I refuse to submit to your imperial decorum. The emperor lacked genuine wisdom and thus became attached to marks. Number 3, he believes the great Dharma. The Buddha Dharma is deeper than the great sea, higher than Mount Sumeru. It is difficult to fathom and difficult to penetrate. But with faith, one can taste its flavor. Entry into the ocean of Buddha Dharma is impossible for the person who lacks faith, just as one might gaze at the ocean and have a great sigh, saying, it's so big, I could not drink it dry in my entire life. So too might one react when confronted with the precious store of Buddha Dharma, saying, how can I ever study all the sutras? However, if one has faith, if one truly believes, then from the shallow one can enter the deep. From the near one can reach the far. From a little one can gain a lot. With constant investigation, little by little, one penetrates the precious store of Buddha Dharma. Deep faith, firm vows, and actual practice are the ingredients. No matter how wonderful the great Dharma is, without firm faith, the wonderful cannot be obtained. Great Dharma refers to prajna wisdom. One simply need believe in his own originally existent wisdom. A passage of the Vajra Sutra says, whoever produces a single thought of pure faith is completely known and completely seen by the Tathagata. The Buddha knows if you bring forth a single thought of pure faith, receiving the telegram, he sends the reply. Relentlessly cultivate morality, concentration, wisdom, stop, put greed, anger, stupidity to rest, stop. The person who receives the reply should respond immediately by relentlessly cultivating morality, concentration, and wisdom, and putting greed, anger, and stupidity to rest. However, the Dharma is so subtle and wonderful that the person who receives the telegram from the Buddha may not even realize it. Number 4, he understands the great principle. This is the understanding that one is oneself, originally a Buddha. The principle is Buddha. Buddha is the principle. The Buddha is one who has already realized Buddhahood. The Mahasattva understands that he himself has not yet realized Buddhahood. But that basically the Buddha and he are one, not two, and not different. The Buddha's cultivation of virtue is perfected. That of living beings is not. Living beings are not yet realized Buddhas. Buddhas are already realized living beings. One should not become confused about this and profess to be a Buddha, saying, I am a Buddha, and the Buddha is me. The Buddha is a living being who has realized Buddhahood. Living beings are not yet realized Buddhas. How is it that we are originally Buddhas? Real Mark Prajna is not separate from the hearts of living beings. The Buddha is the heart of a living beings. Our true heart is the Buddha. As present, however, we have not excavated and uncovered our own true nature, and we use a false thinking heart to manage our affairs. By analogy, the false thinking heart is like a blind man, and the true heart like a man who can see. Why do we conduct ourselves solely on the basis of false thoughts? Have we lost our true heart? No, the true heart has not been lost. The Sutra explains that we use false thinking because one unenlightened thought produces the three fine marks. These three, the mark of karma, the mark of turning, and the mark of manifestation, occlude the true nature so that the Tathagata's precious store cannot appear. When we truly believe we are the Buddha and have actually perfected the Buddha's marks of wisdom and virtue, we will understand the great principle. Number 5, he cultivated the great conduct. In cultivation, one should not have a little success and feel satisfied, mistaking the transformation city for the ultimate truth. The people of the two vehicles obtain some small advantage and are content. Their satisfaction with certification to the first, second, third, and fourth fruits of arhatship prevents them from turning from the small to the great. Some come halfway and think they have reached the goal. There is the case of the ignorant bhiksu who obtained the state of the fourth dhyana and thought he had certified to the fourth fruit of arhatship, saying, I've already arrived at my goal. He was actually only halfway there. Common men go halfway and then turn back without even reaching the fourth dhyana, heavens. They begin to retreat. It's too far, too hard for the likes of us, they say. Some are waylaid in the transformation city, like the one described in the wonderful Dharma Lotus Blossom Sutra. Why was such a city conjured up? Followers of the two vehicles cultivated a day or so seeking the Bodhisattva way without attaining it. Then they cultivated another day and still did not become Bodhisattvas. The following day, although they reached the Bodhisattva way, they did not reach its end, and they decided the process was just too long. These days represent years, decades, eons of time. The longer the cultivators sought to obtain their goal, the more bitter their suffering became. The more weary they grew, the less they were able to proceed. I cannot go on. It's too far. I didn't know it was such a long way. I am really tired, they cried. Seeing their plight, the Buddha conjured up a transformation city and called to them, "Look, there's a city ahead where we can rest a few days. Our goal is but a short distance beyond the city." When they entered the city, the people of the two vehicles became infatuated with the abundance of gold, silver, and precious gems, and decided to settle there. This place is a real treasure house, they thought. In cultivation, one must be patient with suffering and fatigue. Practicing the great conduct, one must be patient, yielding, and generous. One must practice the 6 perfections, the first of which is giving for the benefit of others and not seeking only to help oneself. I have seen members of the Sangha begging, someone says. Their cultivation of the way is solely involved with asking for money, not with giving it. But when bhikshus give money, they do not advertise it. I have known Dharma masters who were so truly committed to helping people that, if asked, they would offer their flesh to eat and blood to drink. For the sake of others, they would willingly offer their own flesh and bones to heaven and earth. It is just that you have not known a person who has truly resolved his heart on Bodhi and who cultivates great conduct. Or perhaps you have, but didn't recognize him. For such a one cannot say to you, "I am one who cultivates great conduct," since he cannot tell you. You have no way to know that he is one who can endure wind, rain, cold, heat, hunger, and thirst, bearing what people cannot bear, yielding what people cannot yield, eating what people cannot eat, and enduring what people cannot endure. On the other hand, those who imitate the style of a seasoned cultivator in order to impress people are useless. Look at me, I can eat what others cannot eat. That is false giving. Playing the great martyr and relinquishing house and home, family and wealth for the sake of appearances is false giving. No matter how good the property or how fine the wife, if one's self-sacrifice is done as a public display, the giving is not true. If it is not done for the sake of appearances, then giving is cultivating the great conduct. Number 6. He passes through great kalpas. The cultivation of a bodhisattva involves planting good roots, but not before one Buddha only. One who fully cultivates passes through 3 great asamkhya kalpas. He seeks the great fruit. Number 7. The Bodhisattva way is cultivated by those who seek the great fruit. Foreign lands are not sought after because bodhisattvas are not small landlords who set about conquering other countries in order to build an empire. Only Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi, the highest fruit of cultivation, is the goal of great beings. A Mahasattva, one whose conduct encompasses those 7 aspects, should thus subdue his thoughts. How? In no particular manner, but rather thus. Thus is a direct statement. It is the principal substance of real mark. And so it is said to have no particular manner of execution. The absence of distinction is referred to as thus, rather than described in superficial terms. One should subdue his thoughts by thinking, I must cause all living beings to enter nirvana without residue and be taken across to extinction. All living beings may be divided into 12 categories. Of the 12 which are discussed in detail in the Sutra, 10 are listed in the Sutra text. Those not listed include those not totally with form and those not totally without form. Those not totally with form include living beings which basically have form, but which maintain it only through parasitic relationships with other living beings, such as transparent jellyfish, who have no eyes and use shrimp to act as their seeing faculty. Those not totally without form include living beings which basically are formless, but which voluntarily appear when called upon through mantras, such as mantra spirits and ghosts. The first 4 of the 12 categories are born from eggs due to thought, born from wombs due to emotion, born from moisture due to a process of union, and born by transformation due to a process of separation. In the process, which involves thought, emotion, union, and separation, doubt is created. With the arising of doubt, karma is made. With the existence of karma, one undergoes retribution, each according to its kind. Each and every birth depends upon causal conditions which determine the retribution to be received. Beings are born from eggs due to thought. An example by way of analogy is the setting hen, which broods over her eggs from morning to night, thinking, my little chicks should come out soon. Come out, little chicks. She thinks for a long time, until finally she thinks them out of their shells. The eggs break into chickens, brought forth from thought. Beings are born from wombs due to emotion. The womb exists because of the love and emotion which occur between male and female. The intercourse of this love and emotion results, under the requisite conditions, in pregnancy in the womb. Beings are born from moisture due to union. The union of karma with warmth produces, under the right conditions, moisture-born creatures, bacteria, viruses, and the like. Beings are born by transformation due to separation. When a karmic formation separates from something old and becomes something new, there is birth by transformation. As for example, the metamorphosis of a moth. Beings with form refers to beings such as auspicious and inauspicious essences which result from astrological phenomena. Such beings take form, but the form is not permanent. Beings without form refers to beings in the four formless heavens. The heaven of boundless emptiness, the heaven of boundless consciousness, the heaven of nothing whatsoever, and the heaven of neither thought nor thought, the heaven of neither thought nor no thought. Beings with thought refers to ghosts, spirits, and essences, either good manifestations like bodhisattvas or evil ones like weird freaks. Beings without thought refers to those which have turned into earth, trees, metal, or rocks. An example by way of analogy is a mountain in Hong Kong called Gazing After Her Husband, so named because in the past there was a woman who climbed the mountain daily with her child in order to stare out to the sea in search of her husband who had gone off to war and never returned, because she sustained that solitary thought. For a long time, the woman eventually turned into stone. High on the mountain can still be seen the stone figure of the woman bearing her child as she stands gazing out to the sea. Beings who are not totally without thought refers to living beings which are involuntarily born into the form of another creature due to that creature's thought powers, such as the larvae of the mulberry moth, whose body is transformed into that of a wasp through the thought power of a lone wasp. The wasp readies its nest and places within it some mulberry larvae. It then proceeds for 7 days to recite a mantra over the insects. The mantra is simple. It's simply, be like me, be like me. And after 7 days, the mulberry larva becomes a wasp. Beings who are not totally without thought refers to those whose bodies are originally thoughtless matter, but who come into existence within that matter due to the longing of the parent. Consequently, those beings become possessed by extremely bizarre thoughts. I must cause them all to enter nirvana without residue and be taken across to extinction. The I here is the false I of the bodhisattva, used expediently to communicate with living beings, beings who still possess a view of self. All of the 10 classes of living beings in the 3 realms are led to enter nirvana without residue. Nirvana is a Sanskrit word which translates as perfect stillness. Taken across to extinction means having put the 2 obstacles, the obstacle of afflictions and the obstacle of what is known, to an end. It also means that the beings have transcended the 2 deaths, share section, birth and death, and change birth and death. There are 4 kinds of nirvana. Number 1, nirvana of the pure, clear self-nature. The self-nature is inherent in everyone. It is not subject to birth and death, and is not larger in sages or smaller in ordinary people. Number 2, nirvana with residue. By using the flame of wisdom on the fuel of afflictions, the secondary bonds of delusion are severed, but the basic bond of the body remains. The body which remains is subject to share section, birth and death. That is said to be nirvana with residue. Nirvana without residue. When afflictions and the residue of share section, birth and death are extinguished, the multitude of sufferings is eternally stilled. There is no further residue. Number 4, nirvana of no dwelling. Here, wisdom and compassion are mutually interactive. Those who have attained the nirvana of no dwelling continue to cross living beings over, but are themselves not subject to birth and death. The nirvana without residue mentioned in the text includes the latter 2 of the 4 kinds of nirvana. Although bodhisattvas take numberless beings to extinction, there are actually no living beings taken across. That is the manifestation of the perfect substance and the great function of prajna. The substance of real marked prajna is without the slightest inequality. As is said later in the Sutra, this Dharma is level and equal with no high or low. The function of contemplative prajna originally is without a mark. As the text later says, those who have relinquished all marks are called Buddhas. If a bodhisattva crosses living beings over and yet attaches to a self who takes them across, the 4 marks are not yet empty, and the false heart is not yet subdued. Such a person turns back on prajna and becomes involved in the 4 marks that unite to form a self. The mark of self is the root of all marks. If one can turn the illusion of self around, then He can take living beings across to nirvana. He can separate himself from the four marks, subdue his heart, and thereby become a true bodhisattva. That's the end of chapter 3 of the Diamond Sutra.